Here is where I get to set my spirit free. Here is where I find my naturality. Where are we going?
I feel like you just said it. It's about being together and having a communal type of feeling with everyone. And so this is what this podcast is supposed to portray. It's getting together, being together, and showing how everyone can persevere and continue on and really get through this hard time.
Definitely communication. Like communication is key, and I think we've seen that throughout this pandemic. Like from everything we was talking. Sorry about that. From everything we was talking about, from like Black Lives Matter to voting and everything that Kiara was mentioning is definitely communication. Once people start talking, you realize, oh shoot, like we do have this in common. What can we do now to change this situation or make it better or whatever?
Yeah, I agree. Like Maya Angelou says, we are more alike than we are unalike. And like as I was saying earlier, we're all human, and we're all basically going through the same thing. So like whatever you think, like a college student like needs motivation or, wishes they had better communication skills, we can use kind of like our perspective to help our faculty and administration by just like understanding on their end, like whether it's like grading or whatever it is, and kind of just like understand that we're all in this together, and maybe like give them motivation or just send out an email reaching out to them, or like I know my coach, he always asks us like how are you doing, how are you dealing with all this stuff, and like just reach out to your coach or your professor and ask them how are you doing, and like do you need any support from us?
I love that.
I think we also do a good job at providing feedback. Like one of my professors, he did like a mid-semester eval kind of thing where she asked us a whole bunch of questions about the class and the design of the class. But then it got me thinking, like maybe other professors don't think to do that, and they probably need the feedback just as much, because I know, like I've told some professors, the way that you're setting up Blackboard isn't good for us. Like we don't know that we have a quiz due today, or the Blackboard interface doesn't say the due date of whatever that assignment is. So then we all miss the date of the assignment because it was in the syllabus, but then the syllabus isn't clear. Neither is Blackboard, so none of us really know what to do. And there's no way for our professors to know that unless we tell them that. And so I think it would be great to, hey, senior professor, hey, I like this, but can an announcement every time something.
So is Marvin with us? Because I'd like to ask him a question about communication. He did 2 really great interviews last Friday. Yeah, right? So I'd like to hear from Marvin how did he feel like he got some power over his message because he got to ask the questions and communicate through the questions what he wanted answers to.
So I actually was going to piggyback off of Nia, but yes, I'll also answer your question, Beanie. So I think also it's important during this time to realize how important teamwork is. And I've noticed throughout my experience with Zoom is that we don't know the answers, truthfully, and that's okay. Within my circles, we definitely had to figure out unorthodox solutions to this very complex situation. And sometimes they've worked, and other times, unfortunately, they haven't worked. And that's okay, because I think this idea of perfection and that we're all so used to is something that we're trying to get away from. And I think it's now better how we're looking more introspective within ourselves and realizing what do we actually want in life, and what is the things that we actually care about. Yeah. And to go off of what you were saying, Deanie, that communication. It's important.
I was asking because you got to ask the questions and be the interviewer. Did that give you some power over the message? Did it make you feel good too, to be in control of that message?
Yes, it did. It definitely, I know during this time, we're definitely not able to keep in contact with each other as frequently as we can. And I feel as though that having the ability to ask the questions that need to be asked and be honest with those questions is very powerful, especially now considering that a lot of the media is being propagated by a certain someone in office, but we're not going into that conversation yet. So having just asking like those basic rudimentary questions and what people want to hear, it definitely does give you a lot of power, and it definitely forces people actually to start thinking a bit more about other perspectives on the subject matter.
So I think in answer to the media, you don't have to go there. I think you could simply say that most media outlets are being controlled now, which being as I teach this, I'm comfortable in saying that. Back in the day, news outlets were not controlled by their corporations, but they are now. And so they're controlling the message. But in the same time, by teaching you how to do interviews and pose questions and work with other people doing research for those questions, you arrive at the idea, I think, and that's where I was going with you. Your questions were fantastic. They were not questions that would easily come to the top of my head, but you answered so many things for me so gracefully. I really appreciated it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You all are really sharing some really poignant points. I'm hearing communication, an extension of Ellen's quote regarding community. I think part of what you're saying is model the behavior that you desire to see. Kind of similar to what Gandhi was saying, be the change you desire to see. Equality in some aspects, having an equal plane. Asking just how you doing, just flipping that, because it's like sometimes we're always the ones that are like, hey, attending to the flock, so to speak. But when a flock comes back to you and it's like, hey, how are you holding up? And I think that's even when we meet with student African American Brotherhood members, that's one of the first things we do. Hey, how you doing, Doc? How you doing? I'm like, oh, how do I answer that today? And I can be as vulnerable and open and as candid as I would like to be. And sometimes when you have those barriers, being that you have these titles and you have this position, we don't think we can allow ourselves to do that. And but one thing I did learn into my counseling is in your vulnerability is where you find your strength. And the fact that you all are doing this right now for the last, I don't know how many minutes we've been on this particular Zoom, you all are giving a lot of yourself. And hopefully with the strength that you are showing is helping others become resilient and understand that they're not alone in this. And I just take my hat off to you all in regards to how you all are able to do that in such a really, I would say, poised and informative, but I would say authentic way. And that could not be done better by any other, I think, population or generation at this particular time. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any additional things they'd like to add on to what Ellen had asked you all.
Yeah, I have something.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say also empathy, understanding that people that are in charge of you, they also go through things and trying to see things from their perspective. I have a class, I don't have to log in, to be honest, but I just feel bad because I feel like the professor has already made life easier by not giving me homework, although I do have exams, and that's the only class I don't have homework in, and it's already recorded. But it's I'll feel very terrible if only 10 people are logged in and he's just teaching. you know, or like my chemistry professor, like I feel like the class is stressful because it's chemistry, but there was one class, like she took, so if we have like 15 minutes in a class, she used like 20 to like 30 minutes just for us to get to know each other and just like talk. Like we didn't do any chemistry. We just like really spoke, and people were like talking about their favorite like action movie, favorite stuff. And I just really like that about like the class. And so that's why I also turn my video on, because I think she really makes effort. So just understanding that like if you're in a position of like that professor, they're really trying, just just do something, like they just want to connect, they want to see how you're doing. And the professors that are doing that, make them feel like they're doing something, because there's only so much they can do. So empathy.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And I think
Excellent.
it'll help us as students to remember that our professors are humans. Our counselors are humans. Everyone at the student support team are humans. And they're struggling too. They have Zoom fatigue too. Probably the professors can't stand standing behind a computer and lecturing. I mean, it's a struggle. So I think it's important to remember that we all are humans. We all are facing this kind of, catastrophe, if you will. And just empathizing with that and understanding it and being aware of it and respecting it.
Yeah, so I think if there's nothing else that you want to add, I would say that it has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on today. And I get a chance to work with you on the rest of the semester, so which is cool. But to spend a little time to kind of see the people behind the camera, in front of the camera, but to know that, and going back to Ellen's point about this community that we are developing, you are a small microcosm of what's been happening in the virtual world. But we're hoping that whatever we are working on today is inspiring at least one person that's watching this, and they can walk away with something a little bit different than when they first got onto the YouTube or got onto the video. Because you know what is your perception right now doesn't have to be your future. It doesn't have to be your story. You can change that. I think Marvin just talked about how you can change and own your story, and I think there's a phrase for that called owning your own narrative. And so I think the narratives that you shared with us today, that shows your strength, that shows your ingenuity, that shows your togetherness, and it shows that people can come together for a cause. And it doesn't, I think, even to what Deanie and I were talking about before, this world is so divisive to try to put you on two sides of things, but you have proven that to be not the case. You all have come together despite the odds, despite the challenges, and look where you're doing right now. You're making change. So for those who ever had doubt, whoever was feeling bad, didn't know who they are, didn't realize that you could possibly even create different ways of looking at things, you all have done that today.
Yeah.